Okay, awesome. Let's get started. Um, welcome everyone to my talk, The Big Rewrite. Today I'd like to try something different, something that I haven't done before yet. It's like a more motivational, inspirational talk, so it's going to be a bit less in depth. There's not going to be any code examples. I'm very eager to know what you guys think, so please do provide me some feedback afterwards. Um, to start off with, maybe a little word about myself. So I'm Jeroen. I'm Belgium. I'm actually a GDE for Android, and I'm also the lead developer of the biggest and coolest IoT system in the world, which is Philips Hue. I'm quite active on Twitter, so feel free to follow me there. And without further ado, let's get immediately started. So, part one, the brave step. Are you living the dream? Is your architecture so solid you could literally build a house on it? Is your code so clean it makes your eyes just tear a little? You can't think of anything you can still refactor? You're using all of the technologies you want to use, Kotlin, architecture components? Are your tests running so fast that you don't even have time to get up and to go for a coffee? Who here is in that state? So a few people, for the record, I'm just putting my hand up to encourage you. I'm not in that state at all. So congratulations to those people. I salute you. I'm generally super happy for you. But to be honest, I'm also a little bit suspicious. Are you reading any one-star reviews? Did you check your crash reports lately? Or maybe you don't test at all because you can't have any bugs if you don't test, right? Truth is, not every software project is... Whoa. Truth is, not every software project is like this. Only happy developers. In reality, we have bugs. Bugs that come and haunt us. And some bugs like us so much that they just keep on popping up back and back again. And we have crashes. Crashes that happen at the most inconvenient times possible. Friday night, right before weekend, anyone? And sometimes, shit simply hits the fan. And then we're in the state where we have to mop it up, but nobody likes to be like this guy, right? So what these things do is they push us into a reactive firefighting mode, where all we're doing is reacting to things that happen. Oh no, the build is red. Let's go and fix that. Oh no, tests are failing. Let's go and fix that. Oh, users are complaining about this. Yeah, we have to go and fix that. And so on, and so on. And it just never stops. And by reacting to all of those things, you don't have any time to do things right. You don't have any time to make things better. And while we are strong and we are persistent, so we can keep up with that for quite some time, but in the end, everybody breaks, right? If we have to deal with regression bugs over and over again, it starts to wear you out. It's as simple as that. So, how on earth do we get out of this state? And then somebody in your team goes like, hey, you know what? What if, never mind. It's too crazy. It's too crazy, never mind. And then the rest of the team is like, yeah, no, please do chair. We're in this state, we really need to do something drastic. And then the person continues, what if we would start over? And then the entire team goes like, yeah, starting over. We can just throw all of the legacy away. A greenfield project. We're going to do things right this time. We have the right team in place. We're going to do Kotlin and architecture components. We're going to test literally everything. It's going to be great. We'll be able to scale our app to new heights. Our users are going to love it. Developers are going to be happy again. Yeah, let's do that. So, the brave step, our app is in a bad shape, it's wearing us down, developers are unhappy, we need to do something drastic, let's start over. Part 2, reality kicks in. one of the very first requirements you're going to get if you want to start over is that you need to be so-called feature neutral. The new app needs to have exactly the same amount of feature as the old app has. Because people in your organization are going to say, okay, it's fine to take a few months to build the app from scratch again. So, but if we leave those users to wait for a few months, we can't give them less than what they already have. So the amount of work you need to do is going to be bigger than you anticipated from the get-go. Forget about building a skateboard first, and then a bike, and then a car, and then a Ferrari. No, no, no. You're going to have to build a Ferrari from the get-go. And backlog refinements. Who here likes backlog refinements? Not so many people. Can you imagine doing that for an entire app? It's going to take you days, if not weeks. Imagine the horror of writing all of those user stories. The work is going to be ginormous, right? And now think back at the last feature you estimated. How accurate was that estimate? Chances are, especially if you're working on a legacy code base, that it wasn't actually that accurate at all. So planning is the single most difficult thing you can do in software. And none of us are trained at doing that. So the estimates we provide, they tend to be overly optimistic because we're positive people by nature. So it's going to be more work than we thought, and our estimates are going to be too optimistic. And then you start building those features, and you suddenly notice that, hey, there's no documentation. So for this feature, what are the corner cases, the intrinsic little details, the stuff we need to be careful of? You won't be able to find them anywhere. They're tucked away deeply inside of the old code base. And that's going to cause you that if you start over, you're going to spend a lot of time on features that weren't problematic to start with to figure out all of those little things again. You're going to do a lot of things that don't really add any value to your users. You're going to make a lot of kids' mistakes all over again. So think about this. If your app was complex enough, so you think it needs to be rewritten to start with, then probably all of those details and little nitty-gritty stuff, they're also going to be complex enough, so they're tucked away deeply in the code base, right? And then here, who doesn't love this guy? Those designers who are always happy, super enthusiastic, and they always come up with crazy new ideas. Can you imagine how many new ideas they're going to come up with in those months you're going to spend rewriting your app? This is going to be insane. And if you rewrite your app from scratch, you might as well change the design, right? You're building every screen all over again. So you do that. But every screen you change is going to have tiny little problems. Either there's going to be minor inconsistencies, or user testing is going to say that users don't get it. So instead of building every screen once, you're going to build it more than once. Some screens you're going to build maybe 2 or 3 times. And the same is going to happen for your requirements. Your requirements are going to keep on changing. People in your organization, because it takes you half a year to build the app from scratch, they're going to get new ideas in the meanwhile. And they're going to want to change things that are already implemented. And in the beginning, it's going to look like you have all of the time in the world to do that. Because you start a project, you have months in order to get it done. So then, why don't you change them? But all of those changes are going to cause rework and issues you have to fix. And you remember the old app you had? Well, crazy thing. It turns out your existing users are going to keep on using it. So you'll at least have to do a little bit of maintenance on it. And then, yeah, when suddenly there's a spike in crashes, yeah, you obviously have to fix that, right? And if users start to complain about something, yeah, obviously. And if Android P introduces new background restrictions, yeah, you'll obviously have to support that. If your company decides to rebrand, yeah, obviously. And so on, and so on. And that's problematic for 2 reasons. One, you're going to have to, all of those fixes and new features you build, you're going to have to also port them to the new app. So it's going to be double work for those. And on top of that, you're going to have less development capacity than you originally anticipated you would have, because some developers are working on the old app. And Did you ever think about how on earth did this app get into this state in the first place? Were then the previous development team, were they completely and utterly incompetent? Were they just a bunch of clowns? Well, possibly. But likely they're not more incompetent than anyone else in this room. The truth is that in every project, shortcuts are going to be taken. Tiny little hacks, workarounds, just in order to make a bit of extra speed and to get back on track with planning. And that's basically technical debt that accumulates. Technical debt is code that works, that does what it's supposed to do in any dirty, hacky way possible. But it's completely and utterly impossible to maintain, or let alone to build further upon it. And like with any other debt, eventually somebody has to repay it, right? And I have some bad news, because that person is very likely going to be us. And then, what are you going to do when your app is ready? You spent a few months, maybe half a year, maybe even a year, to rewrite it from scratch. What are you going to do? You're just going to put it live with the red button switch? That is bound to go wrong, right? The risk involved in doing that. There's going to be so many bugs to fix, so many stuff's going to be on fire. So it's not just a technical risk, but it's also a big risk for your users. Because users, people, they don't like change. And the bigger the change, the more of a hit or miss it's going to be. Consider, for instance, Skype. They rebranded their app and redesigned it almost a year ago. And they just did this one little thing. They, on the list of contacts, you used to have, like, on the right-hand side, you used to have, like, this tiny little badge which indicated if users were online or not. And in the redesign, they forgot about that. They dropped it. So now users would have to press the contact, and only in the details screen they would see if they were online or not. Users went completely nuts over that. They gave Skype 1-star review after 1-star review. So the bigger the change, the more risk for you, and the more risk that your users aren't really going to appreciate it. So, reality kicks in. It's going to be a lot more work than you anticipated. Stuff is going to change, is going to keep on changing, causing even more rework. Your plans are going to be a bit overly optimistic. You're likely overestimating the qualities of the current team with regards to the old team. And you're going to lose precious development capacity on maintaining the old app. Every app was a greenfield project once, right? Do you really think that all of those developers didn't have the best intentions? Do you really think that they were utterly incompetent? No, right? So, part 3. Ship, ship, ship. Because all of these things that changed, because all of these extra work and extra challenges, and despite the motivation you have as a team, you fought really brave, but you're going to miss your deadline. Too many things changed. And then you're just going to pick up your courage again, and you're going to try to hit the second deadline, but likely you're going to miss that one again. And the other one, and the other one. And things are just going to slip without a clear end in sight. And at the same time, you realize that, what are you doing? You're leaving your users in the cold, right? They didn't ask for a rewrite. You're hardly giving them any new features. There's not going to be any short-term value in rewriting the app. All you're doing is leaving them wait for a few months. And in those months, they started asking for new features, new things they desperately need, but you don't have any bandwidth to provide those features because you're doing the rewrite. So you're leaving your users in the cold. And that's going to cause 1-star reviews to come in, slowly but surely. Hey company, are you leaving this up in the cold? Are you leaving it up to dry? Where are the updates? And that's going to make people nervous. And your competitors, they're not going to sit idle either, right? The head start you had over them, you're basically handing it off to them on a silver platter if you start over. Because you're going to need a few months, maybe half a year, in order to have the new app ready. So that head start you had on top of them, you just instantly give it away. This is what happened to, for instance, Netscape. Netscape was the most dominant browser there was. They had like 70, 80% market share. Super successful. And then at some point they decided, let's rewrite our stack from scratch. It took them more than 3 years to get it out of the door. The first releases were plagued with basic issues and bugs and regression and so on. And what turned out happening is that Microsoft caught up on them. They took over with Internet Explorer and Netscape just almost vanished. So when users start to leave, or at least with the prospect of users leaving, it's going to make people in the organization more nervous. So slowly but surely, management is going to get nervous because deadlines keep on slipping, the project gets out of budget, competition, users are complaining, so their perception towards the rewrite is going to turn. Instead of looking at it as the best opportunity we've had in years, they're going to look at it like, hey, this isn't great. Where are all of those promises you made? And that's going to push your team down. It's going to push the morale of your team down. Because of a lot of the reasons why the app still isn't ready is because of stuff that changed due to external factors. But they might look at the development team as the ones to blame. So morale goes down. And trust me, I've been into this situation. I've had a situation where both apps weren't in a good state. And then we decided to rewrite the iOS app from scratch and refactor the Android app. And I'm not saying that the Android project was great. It had its fair share of problems. But what I can tell you, those iOS guys, they really had it rough, man. The perception of a company who really seems to disapprove what you do and looks at you as the only ones to blame for a mess, it's not a nice situation to be in. And what all of this pressure is going to do, it's going to force you to give in. The team is going to let go of their principles. They're going to allow to take quick hacks, nasty workarounds. And all of those good things you had, you're letting them go. So instead of writing espresso tests for everything, you're going to realize, okay, espresso tests, they do add a lot of value, but yeah, turns out it's a lot harder than we figured to get them to run stable, so let's skip it for now. And then our other unit tests, yeah, the architecture we picked, it's maybe not the best choice. Some stuff, testing is hard, so then yeah, let's also skip that and let's do a workaround here, workaround there. And before you know it, technical debt starts piling up again. So if you start missing your deadlines, which because there's a lot more work to do, you probably will, then pressure is going to increase. People are going to want you to ship, you're going to make shortcuts, you're going to give in, and the real question is then, are you really better off than you were before? You don't know that, right? The outcome is very uncertain. When you throw away a project and you start from scratch, you're also throwing away years of programming work, years of bug fixing, of tweaks, all of that knowledge just gone overnight. So, part 4, a better way. Refactoring. Refactoring is basically you take the code and you try to make it better without modifying its external behavior. So you're going to take a very structured step-by-step approach where you step-by-step try to improve the readability, the maintainability, and the architecture of your code. And the steps you take can be either super big or super small. That doesn't matter, as long as it fits in one sprint. Because you need to keep on shipping your app. Because only when your code is in the hands of users, you'll truly know whether it works or not. And while refactoring isn't a silver bullet either, it does have a few intrinsic benefits. Because if you start over from scratch, where are you going to end up? The end is uncertain, right? Whereas if you take an existing code base, and if every step you take is a step in the right direction, you're improving it by design. You're making it better by design. You can only be better than you were before. And while doing that, you continue to maintain the ability to ship. you can still ship new features. You can still ship new features to users. You don't have any big lead time that you need to take. You don't have months of development work before you actually have something shippable. You're also not going to have to tackle those apps of your app, those parts of your app that weren't problematic to begin with. Why would you bother rewriting the about screen? It's just an about screen, right? You could just keep it as is, even if the code isn't great. And you won't lose any development capacity to work on the old app. But in order to be successful at refactoring, it needs to be a team effort. Everybody in the team needs to understand that rewriting an app from scratch isn't a silver bullet. There's a lot of challenges in doing so, and the outcome is very uncertain. So you need to have those tough discussions so that everybody agrees what approach you're going to take. Because refactoring, it's also going to be challenging. It's not always going to be fun. So at some point, people are going to coin, hey, we need to rewrite. And then you still need to know, everyone, why you're doing this, why you're doing what you're doing. And then the first thing you need to do in order to improve your app is to basically stop making it worse. So stop doing dirty hacks. Stop doing dirty fixes. But everything you fix now needs to be a step in the right direction. This is what they often refer to as the Boy Scout rule. You make sure that you leave things better behind than the way you found them. And the Boy Scout rule is actually more powerful than you may think. Because if you do that long enough, then you can really polish up so many things in your code base. But it has its limitations. It's not going to be enough. If your architecture is fundamentally wrong and you need to make that different, then probably you need to be able to take bigger steps. And I'll get back to that a bit later on, how we can do that. The second thing you need to do is that every new feature you write, that needs to be top-level quality, exactly the quality you'd like to have. No compromises. That code needs to be written with maintainability in mind, because the true cost of software is in its maintenance. So, now that we stop making it worse, we can make it better, right? First, define a clear goal, so that everybody in the team works towards the same goal. Is it going to be a Java app? Maybe a Kotlin app? What kind of libraries do you want to use? How do you want your technology stack to look like? Are you going to use any coding conventions? What are you going to test? And even more important, what aren't you going to test? And so on. Make sure to set that vision as a team, so you can all work towards it. And setting the vision also helps you in order to monitor progress. You can then see, okay, we've set this vision of going to a full-blown Kotlin app, to have the architecture components in place, and to have like a test coverage of, let's say, 70%. Then 3 months from now, you can reevaluate, where are we now? Are we moving fast enough towards that goal? Maybe we can do a bit less. Probably we need to do a bit more, but at least you can follow it up, right? And also something I personally like is to gamify stuff. So if you're refactoring, what's likely going to happen is you're going to make something better here, something there, something there, and something there. But it's all going to be like minor things. It's often going to be compromises. So it's not always easy to see the bigger picture, to appreciate that you've actually pushed your app forward. But if you have the clear goal in mind, and you monitor it, you can also visualize it and appreciate it better, to be proud of yourself as a team. What are the steps that you've already taken? All right. With a clear goal in mind, the next thing we need is to have a CI in place. First, the question. Who here is using pull requests? Okay, that's the majority of people. That's great. Because what pull requests do is they decouple your feature branches, the new stuff that's in development, from the stuff that's already in develop, which is already stable. They decouple that so that you only integrate the new feature when all of your quality checks pass. So with a pull request, you can enforce that you have to do a code review first, that the code style is according to what you defined. You can run lint, you can run detect, you can run other stuff, you can run all of your tests. And only when everything is okay, then you merge it in. So the quality of what you merge in is going to be a lot bigger, which is great, right? But pull requests have one major drawback. And that is, imagine if your builds are slow. Then you create a pull request, and it takes half an hour to build. But yeah, sometimes you forget to check in a file, so you have to wait half an hour. Oh, okay, forgot the file. Up, check in the file, wait another half an hour. Then somebody can start a review. Okay, review is done. You have to push some feedback. Fine, wait another half an hour. Oh, fuck, forgot about the test. Fix the test, another half an hour. So the throughput time suddenly becomes a lot longer. So it makes more of a process. So it could encourage people to actually not create many pull requests and just to create one pull request per week or one every few days. And that would be disastrous. Because the bigger a pull request, the lower the quality of the reviews are going to be. If a team member of mine creates a pull request with 2 days of work or more, then my mind starts to melt. I generally cannot give a professional review on that. It's just too much code. I can't see the trees through the forest anymore. And also, the bigger the pull request, the longer likely that branch has been branched off of develop. So the more merge conflicts you're going to have while merging it in. And let's face it, every merge conflict you have is just flipping a coin and hoping it ends up the way it should be, right? So make sure you focus on small pull requests. They increase the quality of your code and reduce the amount of errors you make. But in order to facilitate that, your CI needs to be blazingly fast. All of your quality checks need to run in under 5 minutes. And it doesn't just need to be fast, it also needs to be super reliable. Whenever a build fails, there should be a clear reason for it. The last thing you want is that people see a failing build, they go and investigate it, what's wrong, they can't find any problem, they hit rerun, and then suddenly it passes. Well, that may not seem like an issue. It actually really is an issue. Because the first time that happens, you're going to be like, okay, this was weird. Second time, maybe as well. The third time, you're just going to say like, yeah, it's probably that random failure again. I'll look at it later. And if that happens, you completely lose all of the value of your rapid feedback safety net. So make sure you have a good CI in place, and a good CI is one that runs blazingly fast and super reliable. Next, you're going to have to write tests. There simply is no way around that. Tests don't just help you to prove that your code actually does what it's supposed to do, but it also helps you to make sure that your code keeps on doing what it's supposed to do. And let's face it, your app is only going to get bigger, right? Manual testing never scales. So maybe you could still keep up with it now, but you can't scale your app forever with manual tests. And if you're wondering, yeah, we're not writing any tests now, so how on earth do we get started? Well, the best way to do that is to stop fixing bugs. Just enforce the rule that you can only fix a bug if you've proven that that bug exists using a failing unit test to begin with. And if you then fix it, you're not only sure that you've actually fixed a bug, so it's not a blind fix, but you're also sure that that bug doesn't reappear again. It could still be the wrong bug, but yeah, fine, then you at least fixed the bug, right? All right. And then something typically that also happens is that your code is like a spaghetti code base where everything is linked to everything. Maybe here in Italy, the spaghetti code base is like a little bit better than in other parts of the world, but still, it's tedious to work in a spaghetti code base because you want to improve this class, and then you polish it up a bit, and then suddenly you also have to touch that class and that class and that class, and it just ripples through everything. So a spaghetti code base stands in your way of fundamentally making things better. What you're really missing in that case is to have clear contracts in place. Ideally, you would want to have something like, for instance, for your login module, you want to have something where you just start an activity, hey, do a login for me, and then the result is the user token you get back. That would be an ideal contract. That's super simple. The rest of the app doesn't know anything about how the login code works. So that should be the ideal thing you strive for. And that is something where modularization helps. Modularization doesn't just allow you to have faster incremental builds, allow you to do instant apps, or to easier parallelize development, but it also forces you to have those contracts in place. So take, for instance, if your login code is tied to everything, you could fairly easy just take that code, move it to a separate module, and then you polish up the interface a bit without touching the rest. So it has a start activity and return a token. And then suddenly you've decoupled the login part from all of the rest of your app. And that is super powerful, because that allows you to divide and conquer. When some part of your application is completely unaware of the implementation of another part, you suddenly have a lot of freedom. Take the login module, for example. Now you can choose, what are we going to do with it? Will we completely throw it away and rewrite it? You can, because the rest of the app isn't really dependent of that anymore. Or you could say, maybe the code is good enough so we don't have to do anything at all. Or maybe you're just going to polish it up and refactor a bit internally. Doesn't matter. You can go every way you want to go. Modularization allows you to divide and conquer, and potentially also allows you to take bigger, more risky steps. So you can really, for instance, with the login module, you can just throw everything away, rewrite it from scratch, and then you have the perfect thing that you wanted to have to begin with. And now you're going to say like, hey, I thought your entire talk was about that you should never rewrite. Well, yeah, that's true. But you can rewrite parts of it, right? And the reason why this is a good idea and the previous one isn't, is because you're going to focus on those parts of your app that are really problematic to start with, and you can just ignore all of the other parts. The parts that you do touch are smaller, so you can still fit them in 1 or 2 sprints. So you make a smaller steps. And because you have the clear contract in place, you can basically feature toggle between the old and the new implementation on demand. So you can manage your risk there. You can immediately integrate the code into develop and already start testing it in the rest of your development. You can gradually roll it out to users to see how well it holds up and only then ship it. So modularization has a lot of benefits. And one of the key benefits is that you can actually make those bigger steps to do the fundamental changes you probably have to make. All right. Now, if you read any book on refactoring, one of the first things the book is going to tell you is that you need to have clear tests in place. Because without tests, you will never know that that small change you made will break your code or not. You need to be able to make small changes, quickly run the tests, and then see if everything still works as it should work. Now, by definition almost, legacy code is code that is either poorly tested or doesn't have any tests at all. So how do you tackle that? Well, I don't really want to go into any particular strategies to deal with that here, but I do want to give you one pro tip. Make the most out of your tools. Android Studio is one of the most powerful IDEs in the world. Who here still renames their classes by hand? With by hand, I mean you change the class definition, and then you go to the file, and then you change the class name. Nobody. That's amazing. Or one person in the back. So you can actually ask Android Studio to do that. But Android Studio can do a hell of a lot more. You can move code around. You can extract a superclass. You can implement an interface. You can inline an interface, extract a method, extract parameters, extract delegates. You name it, Android Studio can do it. All you need to do is just learn how it works. And it's important to learn that, because if you have a tool do all of the work for you, it's going to be less error prone. Plus, it's going to be less tedious and boring for you. So you can focus on the parts that you're really enthusiastic about to begin with. So on a really, challenging, exciting part of coding. And while you're doing all of this, it's very important that you continue to release. You need to release, release, release. Only when your code is in the hands of a user, you will have the final seal of approval that that code does what it's supposed to do. So releasing is super important. Because also if you don't release, then you're going to be scared of releasing. You're going to think, we now worked for 2 months on this code base. We know there's going to be bugs in them, but so we don't want to ship it yet. We want to do more testing, but at the meantime, you're working more features, so you're going to add more bugs on top of it. So not releasing only will delay releasing even further. And I don't know about you, but I'd rather fix the bugs in a release of 2 weeks of work, so there's only going to be like 5 bugs, than of 2 years of work, because then there's going to be 5,000. And And I'm not saying this all is going to be easy. It's definitely not going to be a walk in the park. At some points, you're going to feel like you're juggling code around and you're really not going to feel satisfied. But we didn't go to the moon because it was easy. We went to the moon because it was hard. For instance, in my team, we're struggling to modularize our app. We have this one part of our code base which we want to get modularized, and we already took 3 steps at it, and we failed 3 times. And that's completely fine, because a failure hardly ever is a complete failure. While doing so, we learned a ton. We also cleaned up quite a few things, and I'm quite sure that if we try it now again, that we would actually succeed. And modularization is also, if you have a big bunch of spaghetti and you extract one module, the next module is going to be easier, right? Because there's less spaghetti left. So over time, it's always going to be easier and easier. So, Jesus, my clicker. So, a better way, refactor your code step by step. You cannot do this by yourself, so the entire team needs to have the buy-in, needs to be involved. You need to set a common goal, and you need to work towards it. Make sure to stop making things worse first. Write a lot of tests. Have a fast CI in place, and then modularize, so you can actually make those big breaking changes while still keeping the risks under control. So, we've already reached the end of my talk. Hopefully I was able to convince you of the fact that rewriting an app is not without its challenges. And you're likely going to be underestimating quite a few of them. So I'd like you to have the reflex that next time somebody starts talking about like, hey, we should rewrite it, that you just run away as fast as you can. And does it mean that there is no place for a rewrite at all? Of course not. Rewrites can still make sense in some cases. If you, for instance, completely want to change your technology stack, like what Facebook did. They used to have web apps, now they have native apps. Yeah, in that case, yeah, obviously you can do that, right? Or maybe you just have a very, very small app, and it would only take a few weeks. Fine, then also do that. Or maybe you're just changing the design, the mental model, your backend, and everything. So then you say, yeah, it's better to start over, which is also fine. But then you need to realize that what you're doing is you're actually creating a new product, and you're launching a completely new product, which is totally fine, but that's always inherently risky business to start with. For instance, I rewrote an app from scratch once, just for a silly reason. We had the app developed by a supplier, and we forgot to negotiate with the supplier that we would get the source code. And the app in the Google Play Store was horrible. It had like a 1.3 star rating, so we didn't ever see the code, but we know that the app wasn't performing at all. So then we had the option like we either buy something which we know users don't like, or we just make something new. And then we decided to make something new. Fine, and that turned out pretty well. So, to summarize everything, rewrites are not only risky, but they're also super time consuming. So try to reduce that risk as much as you can. Make sure that you focus on your user first. Minimize the time to market so you can ship something in the user's hand as soon as possible, and make sure you can still keep on outputting features, because that's in the end the reason why you exist. Refactor to make your code incrementally better, but also make sure that you create a framework so you can take more bigger, more daring, more groundbreaking changes so you can really structurally drive it forward. Make sure you automate your tests and release. That's all I can say. And as a final remark, I want to say that apps they're only getting bigger over time, right? We're only adding features to our apps. The average app teams are only getting bigger. So that means that the cost of rewriting them from scratch is also increasing. And hence the likelihood of that ever happening is decreasing. So whether you want this or not, all of the skills that I hinted at here, those refactoring skills, they're going to become more and more important for us as software developers. So make sure you also invest there in your career, that you master the tools properly, you read a refactoring book and so on, so you master those skills. And have faith. I'm quite sure that the 10x rockstar developer ninjas like you, or at least that's what your LinkedIn profile says, I'm quite sure that you're managed. Everything will turn out just fine. I want to give a huge shout out to Clement127. He has an insanely good Flickr account with all of those Lego images. Please do, when you go home, Google for Legography. It's going to be the best day you lose this month looking at pictures. It's really great. I have some further reads if you're interested. And last but not least, that was it. So I'm Jeroen Mols, at Jeroen on Twitter. I also actively write my blog on jeroenmols.com. And that was it. Thanks for coming to my talk.